Hey, it's Chris, Liege of Games. This is Encyclopedia. This is a dice worker placement game. Let me tell you why I don't think it's anything like Wingspan, and that is completely okay. Let's do this. This is Encyclopedia. Holy Grail, Synapse Games. They sent me one of the prototype copies. Let's talk about it for a second, because now that I've played it, now that I've seen it hands-on, how does this compare not only to the other Euro games that I've played recently, how does this compare to the other worker placement games I've played previously, and how does this compare to the other dice, in particular, worker placement games, because this game is heavily featuring dice. Now, the reason I say it's not Wingspan, not saying that it's bait, but I'm saying is that was the main comparison that was being made during the Kickstarter campaign by other videos. And I have to put it out there that this isn't Wingspan. The similarities of Wingspan in the sense that there are animals, you play animals into habitats, but that's, about it. Apart from the animals cost you, or certain things can cost you resources, but not in the sense that even to play the animal cards cost you resources. So the comparisons kind of end there. This is a heavy dice worker placement where you are using your dice on various action spots around the board in order to do the actions at those board spots. Wingspan, you are taking the birds that you have and playing them into the habitats to get the effects that they give you to build an engine, to make your engine better, to score more points with your engine. There is no engine building with this game. You are strategically managing the resources as you go along in order to place the cubes of your own color to research the animals in their set different features of the habitats in the difference of 5 different ways, including the continent or locale of that, and then to publish said research, to remove those cubes, to score combos, to create endgame scoring as well. So maybe that's it too. Maybe there's a little endgame scoring in the grouping, in the set collection there, essentially, if you will. But the main gist of this game is not Wingspan. And that's okay. There are 2 main aspects in this game that you need to know about they're going to be heavily utilizing. The animals, the creatures themselves that you are going to be recruiting from the various continents, which are color marked, which again match the dice. And then on the bottoms of these cards, they're going to have 4 different elements, 4 different areas, all costing, all giving, and all potentially matching up slightly different, even with the animals in the same continent, depending on what type of animal they actually are, having anywhere from 2 to even 4 in a distinct column that you're going to be trying to match up, because the more you can match up, the more you can research, then the more you can publish, and then the more combo you can get in the set collection endgame scoring points. Make sense? Well, I mean, that's basically the gist of the game. The second element are the strategy cards, are the specific cards that you can, instead of buying these, get to your bottom of the card benefit in order to give you certain actions as you're going along. And the very interesting aspect of this is you have instant effects and you have continuous effects. You have effects that are going to take place depending on where you place your dice, but you also have effects that are going to be at the end game, or effects that are going to be towards the scoring aspect, the second half of the board. Whether that is increasing the die value that is there, or increasing the cube value that is in the publishing area and for the end game scoring. Now, the dilemma that comes along with that is you can have 4, but you can continually replace the ones that you already have. So this is a game where you do not stick with a strategy, you adapt to where you are at as you are going, especially with those cards for the timing of when the bonus needs to be right. And if you really enjoy that, of mixing and matching, because sometimes the creatures on the continents, on the colors, will match up. And if you're able to match the dice to the color to the creature, you're going to get extra reputation. Extra reputation may lead to extra strategy cards, which may lead to extra victory points because you can research better. Does that sound complicated? It does sound complicated, but let me assure you, as a non-worker placement person, it was not half as complicated as it just sounds when I lay it out to you. You are getting your resources from several action spots. You are using then several other dice to obtain potentially more animals based on continent, based on the symbols that you're trying to match up at whatever level. Because you are also not restricted in researching one level or one level all on a card. You can research multiple levels on multiple cards of the same continent. And therein lies the beauty. Do you go for the higher value, higher risk, harder to get research? Or do you go mass market, low value, and go high in that aspect? The variety is extensive to say the least, which is both a boon and a curse in this game because there are so many different cards when I'm looking at this, right? You can get cards of the same continent that have absolutely nothing in common. And that's going to frustrate you, and then it's going to mean that you're going to have to pivot potentially to a completely different color continent, and you've potentially wasted or not been able to optimize the animals that you have in the first place. But that is the tactical pivoting in this otherwise very strategic game with the resource management via the worker placement. So where's the twist in this game so far, Chris? You've said it's very logical, right? Get this, do this. The twist in it is the dice themselves. On some of these action selection spots, whether it be the bank or the explorer or the animals themselves, sometimes the value matters more. Sometimes the color matters more. And that's where you really have to start to, split hairs. What is mattering more to you? How are you choosing to spend your resources? Because there are resources you can spend to increase the value of the die. There are resources that you can spend to change the color of the die. So it's never prohibitive or you're never unable to do it in that sense, but it's a risk reward. Therein lies and ties in the second twist that goes along with that. The dice that you have are splayed along 4 spots on the top of your player board in your order. And like several other games that use a similar mechanism, you are not only allowed to choose from your dice, you are allowed to choose from anyone's dice on the table. Now, however, if you do, sort of like a la Isle of Skye, if you will, if I want your tile in Isle of Skye, I need to pay you the price that you are asking. In this case, the prices are set and designated by your player boards, which are symmetric. But if that die is next to a cost, I have to not really pay that cost, but the player whose die it is gets that benefit, whether it's victory points, reputation, or even just more money or currency, which is a different dynamic. Now, I'll say in the 2-player game, and this is a 2-player game, so take this for what it's worth, there was not nearly as much dice using from other people as there could have been. And maybe that's also the style of how we play. Just because I'm choosing to use my resources and not give benefit to my opponent. Now, is it advantageous to do that, depending on the circumstance? Potentially. But, especially my mindset tends to be in these games, and this is my bias, that I am going to make it harder for myself rather than easier for someone else. That's just me. How do I feel about this? What did I like? And then maybe what I didn't like or what I can see other people not liking. What did I like? I mean, again, this is a truly tactical puzzle in terms of the animal creature matching with the symbols at the bottom. It is. And it is frustratingly difficult at times because you'll have one that matches up and then 3 that don't. And then one that matches up and 3 that don't. And so to be able to match them up in the order, because again, you're never going to get through all of this deck in one game, which is a good thing. And I say that as it forces you to choose wisely. You are not going to get the most optimization that you can. It's just going to be whoever can make lemonade out of the worst looking lemons, potentially sometimes. Who can still triumph by being given the worst possible combination of things? And I say that in a good way. Like, it doesn't just make it easy to get like, okay, well, all of these 4 match up and, all of these 5 on these 5 match up. And, all of the ones on this one match up with all of the ones on this one, which match. No, it doesn't do that. It doesn't hold your hand that way to make it easy to score. It makes you make tough decisions in terms of which ones you want to match up and then which ones you want to score, because you can take them off of multiple ones that aren't even on the same continent when you're publishing But if you choose to do so, then they don't end up in your publication pile. And your publication pile at the end is part of the set collections that are going to give you points. And if you don't have enough of those, you don't even score. And that becomes a big game changer at the end. So do you go for the immediate gratification points based off of the sets there, or do you go for the more cumulative, non-linear scoring at the end and hope that your delayed gratification pays off over someone else's instant gratification? Therein lies the tricky key to this puzzle. And that's good. It's good from that aspect. It doesn't overstay its welcome. You only get potentially 4, possibly 5. Well, I guess you could technically have maybe 6 or 7 turns in a round. But it's 6 rounds and it plays relatively succinctly. Because you take an action. You take one of the dice and you do the actions, period. Now, I say it can be other numbers because one of the bonuses at the beginning of the round, if you're familiar with like Quacks of Quedlinburg, you play a card that gives a special bonus to that round. Well, this does the same. You're flipping over a token and maybe you get extra resources. Maybe you get an extra die. So now you have 5 dice on your board instead of 4. That'd be 5. And there's things called the Royal Marker, which will cash in for raising the value of a dice a really high amount, more so than the other resources, or they can be cashed in for extra turn at the end of every round. Well, one round. And that leads me to the reputation. What I was concerned with was this reputation, right? It's not victory points. And this is where, again, the dynamic, the yin and the yang of reputation and victory points, I didn't really know what to make of it when I started playing. Because you've got this reputation that is just kind of going along as stars, and then you've got the actual victory points, how do I win aspect as well. And it's this track, right? And as you cross the points on the track, you get bonuses. It's relatively straightforward. You've seen it 100 times. But the nice thing and the interesting twist on this is, well, you get to the end of the track, right? Most of the time, it's, you get one thing and it gets better and it gets better and it gets better and it's done, right? And then that aspect is done for you. You've maxed that out. You've metered it out. And then you move on to a different aspect of the game that you're trying to min-max. No, it goes back to the beginning. You start over and you're able to then go back up it again. And you can go up it rather quickly. You can go up it several times fully in one game. Again, offering the balance dynamic that people may be looking for as a different strategy. Now that we've covered most of those things, what can I see people potentially not liking? Sometimes I did not feel overall that the value of the dice was necessarily as important, right? Especially when you're going for resources, because the main thing that resources are being used for, whether it's coins or like the explorer tokens, is upgrading the die values that you need to be able to research the spots, the tiers on the animal cards. And I mean, the coins are worth 1, the explorer tokens are worth 2, right? So if you have 2 different locations up at the top, you've got the bank and sort of the explorer area. And based on the bank, if you put any die, any number in there, you get 5 coins. Well, on the explorer area, that gets you the explorer tokens. If you put in, 1 or 2, you get 1. If you get a 3 or 4, you get 2 of them. And if you get a 5 or 6, you get 3 of them, right? If you have a die, any value, and you know what you need, well, it's easy to min-max that. It's very easy because also the color doesn't matter on either of those. So color doesn't matter as much on every spot in the same way that number doesn't. Because obviously if the explorer tokens are worth 2 points per one, well, then a 1 or 2 gets you 2 points worth. 3 or 4 gets you 4 points worth, and a 5 or 6 gets you 3 of them, which is 6 points. Well, if I know that no matter what, I'm getting 5 coins over here, which can raise it 1 for every coin, so that's a maximum of 5 points to raise up a value, and I can get 2, 4, or 6 over here, well, I mean, if I know what number the die is, which I do, obviously, it's easy to go, well, it's this side or this side. Now, sometimes you need the explorer tokens for that, for a different aspect, because they're the only things that can change the die color. But otherwise, for the sheer number value, in terms of that, it's a little bit too straightforward. Put that out there. A little bit of tweaking there I would not mind. To make it a little bit, again, harder of a decision. I mean, again, going back to a point I said earlier as a pro and as something I liked, I can also see people not enjoying the fact that those animals just sometimes do not add up. You just don't get animals that are in the color that you need per round because, unlike other games, the animals and the strategy cards do not refill automatically as you take them each round. So there is a set number out there per round. So, for example, there are 6 animal cards. I almost messed that one up. 6 animal cards out there in a 2-player game per round. And so if you take one of them, then there are only 5. It does not get refilled automatically. If you take a second one, there's still only 4. 3, 2. The one thing is good about that, though, is no matter how many are left over, all of those cards are wiped off the board at the end of the round. And you put a whole new set out. But I can see people not enjoying the fact that, again, there's a limited supply of those. And if you just don't get the one that you're looking for, again, it's going to cause you to have to pivot a lot more than some people are going to want to do in these games. And that's the nature of it. I would also say that, I guess, if you are looking for something very heavy, this is not going to fit your desires. It's not going to whet your appetites. And I mean that, again, as a positive way. But like I mentioned, in some of the specific areas, color doesn't really matter, or number doesn't really have a significant difference. And so if you're someone who really wants to crunch it and really is looking for something heavier, this is not going to suit your needs. If you're looking for something, though, that is the next step up, that maybe isn't quite, comparatively as heavy as Teotihuacan. This one is slightly different in that sense in some of the scoring, especially with the researching and publishing, especially. It's done well from that aspect. It is comparable to Collab, the other dice worker placement game I have played this year on crowdfunding. The one thing I liked better about Collab was I felt like it was easier. It was more enticing to use other people's dice. As I said earlier, in this one, I did not feel the enticement, the allure, the attraction of using other people's dice to my benefit, that it just benefited them too much. And like I mentioned, the number or the color mattered less than the resources or the points that they were getting for it. And so if that could be tweaked just somehow to give more enticement, not only for the person who's receiving those rewards, but for me as the person using it, that would be something that I would really be happy with as well. Because I just thought, if you're going to include that mechanic, if it doesn't get done, it's just not as strong in terms of thematic element or mechanic as I would like if we're going to just have it there in the first place. So overall, very solid game. It was not difficult to get to the table, was not difficult to understand. The rules are, the rule was like a 24 page rule book, but the symbology was not difficult to learn. The rule book was already very well placed out. And again, as someone who is not, but slowly getting more comfortable with worker placement games, especially on the dice side of things, I was not overwhelmed. I was not intimidated. I was not trepidatious. And the mechanics flowed very fluidly in terms of understanding how the interactions took place without making them too easy to be able to master or completely run away with things right from the get-go because everything just clicked so easily. So, there you go. That is my thoughts on Encyclopedia. The Pledge Manager, I believe, will be opening up soon. And so if you missed this or you went in for $1, you can check it out there and still get in on it, I believe. Thank you again, Holy Go Grams, for sending me the copy to be able to play, to show you guys, and to be able to talk about it a little bit. If you like this, give it a thumb so YouTube knows to let other people know that I'm doing a good job doing this. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see in the future. And just thank you for watching. That's all I got. Stay classy. I'll see you around.